I would like to introduce Dr. Sambit Das. He is a endocrinologist, Endeavor Clinics and Apollo Sugar Clinics, Bhubaneswar. Publication in International and National Journals 34, Abstract 18, Book Chapters 14.
आप क्या डायबिटीज
Hello.
खत्म कर दोगे? एक पेशेंट कम कराओगे मेरा? डायबिटीज फ्री हो रहे हो आप? बिल्कुल आपके इंटरव्यू करना पड़ेगा, वो डायबिटीज फ्री किया है इनको।
I think Dr. Ram needs.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes. I would like to introduce Dr. Samit Das. He is Senior Consultant Endocrinologist, Endeavor Clinic and Apollo Sugar Clinics. Publication in International National Journals 34, Abstract 18, Book Chapter 14. Phase 3 Clinical Trial 7. He is the Secretary Endocrine Society of Odisha. Having Secretary Scientific Secretary ASICON 2018. Secretary AARO Odisha chapter. He is a member of Endocrine Society of India, AEC, ESO, ITS. I would request Dr. Sambit Das to start his lecture, secondary diabetes.
आप उसमें तारीख लिखिए ना, पहली वाली देखो।
Thank you, sir.
अभी
Kind introduction. I'll request Dr. Ram to kindly mute because. Hello.
Yes. Lecture में accept करूँ तुमने.
Sir, so hope I am visible and audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. So the topic which has been assigned to me is secondary diabetes, and it's actually, we should not forget about the ADA 2021 classification, where it has been shown that there are 4 types of diabetes grossly, and that has endorsed that thing also. It is type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, gestational diabetes, and the third point is specific types of diabetes due to other causes. And in the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'll be discussing only those things, that is the number 3, specific types of diabetes due to other causes. So if we see that, if we elaborate that specific types of disease due to other causes, we have 6 or 7 types of diabetes. One is genetic defects in beta cell function. Second is genetic defects of insulin action. Third is secondary diabetes due to exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. Fourth is secondary diabetes due to endocrinopathies. Fifth is drug and chemical induced diabetes that lead to secondary diabetes. Various infections that can lead to diabetes. Uncommon forms of immunomediated diabetes and other genetic syndromes sometimes associated with diabetes. So let us go one by one regarding this secondary diabetes. So coming to the first one, that is genetic defects in beta cell function, and grossly we can clump them as monogenic diabetes, and they can occur at very young age, which is known as the neonatal diabetes, or they may occur at younger age, less than 25 years of age group, that is known as the maturity onset diabetes in young. And both of these things, or the monogenic diabetes, represent only a small fraction of diabetes, that is less than 5%. Coming to neonatal diabetes, diabetes occurring under 6 months of age is termed as neonatal or congenital diabetes. 80 to 85% of the cases can be found to have an underlying monogenic cause, that is a single gene defect. Neonatal diabetes occur much less often after 6 months of age. So whenever a diabetes occurs less than 6 months of age, we can term it as neonatal diabetes, and after 6 months usually it doesn't occur. Similarly, type 1 diabetes never occur in children who are less than 6 months of age. It's mostly neonatal diabetes. This neonatal diabetes can be either permanent or transient. Transient neonatal diabetes is most often due to overexpression of genes on chromosome 6q24, is recurrent in about half of the cases and may be treatable with medication other than insulin. Permanent neonatal diabetes is most commonly due to autosomal dominant mutation of the genes encoding KIR6.2, or KCNJ11 and SUR subunit of the beta cell potassium ATP channel. So whenever these genetic defects of the potassium ATP channel is the culprit for neonatal diabetes, these are the children, even if they are less than 6 months of age, they can respond better to sulfonylurea rather than insulin. And the other type of genetic defect that can occur as a permanent neonatal diabetes is insulin gene mutation that requires insulin therapy even less than 6 months of age. So these are the number of genes that can lead to neonatal diabetes. We have discussed about KCNJ11, which is an autosomal dominant, usually permanent diabetes, but it may present with delay in development or seizures and usually responsive to sulfonylurea. Insulin receptor gene, permanent, it's IGR and insulin requiring. The other treatable or transient neonatal diabetes is GQ24 overexpression, and it is usually transient. The patient may present with macroglossia umbilical hernia, and paternal duplication of maternal methylation defect can be the cause, and that is usually transient. After some time it usually recovers. The other genetic defects are GATA6 or FOXP3 or EIF2A-K3 mutations. Now, if the monogenic diabetes occur at a little year later age and less than 25 years of age, we call it as maturity onset diabetes of the young, or MODY. Monogenic forms of diabetes associated mutation of the single gene, and the diagnostic criteria of MODY has been many, but I'll just highlight the simpler diagnostic criteria, that is by Tattersall and Fajans. The Tattersall-Fajans diagnostic criteria for MODY is that the patient should be diabetic and is less than 25 years of age. Autosomal dominant mode of transmission, that means we can see 3 generations having autosomal dominant mode of inheritance. Absence of ketosis at any time, and control with insulin in at least an early stages of disease. It can be controlled without insulin. Clinical criteria are no longer valid, and genetic analysis is needed to confirm the diagnosis. So whenever we suspect a MODY, we must do a genetic analysis for that patient, because it has got many implications later on. Some of the MODY which I have shown it here is the glucokinase deficiency, or the GCK MODY. It's stable, non-progressive, elevated fasting plasma glucose only, and they do not require any therapy throughout their life course. HNF1 alpha, 4 alpha, and 1 beta are important because they are very common MODY category. HNF1 MODY is progressive insulin secretory defect with presentation in adolescence or early adulthood, lower renal threshold for glycosuria, and sensitive to sulfonylurea. HNF4 alpha is progressive insulin secretory defect with presentation in adolescence and have large birth weight and transient neonatal hypoglycemia. They are also sensitive to sulfonylurea. So HNF1 alpha, 4 alpha are sensitive to sulfonylurea, whereas glucokinase deficiency doesn't require any therapy. So diagnosis of monogenic diabetes, why it is important? Because the HNF1 alpha, 4 alpha can be treated with sulfonylurea. MODY, the GCK MODY doesn't require any therapy. Additionally, diagnosis can lead to identification of other affected family members, and we can do a thorough genetic counseling for that family too. The clinical features of MODY are: patients usually are non-obese, do not need insulin initially, later may become insulin requiring, and diabetes due to HNF1 alpha, 4 alpha defects and MODY 1 and MODY 3. Isolated mild fasting hyperglycemia we can find in MODY 2, which is glucokinase deficiency. MODY 5 is actually a diabetes with renal cyst and renal agenesis, which is not a very good MODY, and renal cyst and diabetes syndrome defects in HNF1 beta, which is known as the MODY 5. They usually resemble type 2 diabetes, but it is very important to differentiate type 2 diabetes versus monogenic diabetes, because monogenic diabetes are usually non-obese, type 2 diabetes are obese or overweight. Acanthosis nigricans, which are signs of insulin resistance, are absent in monogenic diabetes or MODY, but they are quite common in type 2 diabetes. 3 generations of transmissions are there with monogenic diabetes, but in type 2 diabetes, there is no autosomal dominant like transmission. And monogenic diabetes only insulin secretory defect, but type 2 diabetes it's mostly insulin resistance and insulin deficiency. Monogenic diabetes can be seen in all population, but type 2 diabetes usually population with high prevalence of type 2 diabetes. Monogenic diabetes responds better to sulfonylurea. Type 2 diabetes, the first choice of therapy is usually metformin. So we must know the difference. Apart from the genetic defects in insulin secretion, we have genetic defects in insulin action. And there are various types of insulin resistance that are genetically and monogenic also. The metabolic abnormality is associated with mutation of the insulin receptor or the post-insulin receptor pathway can lead to severe insulin resistance and a different genetic kind of insulin resistance. We have type 1 and type A insulin resistance. Individual with this mutation may have severe acanthosis nigricans. Women may be virilized and have enlarged cystic ovaries. Leprosonism and Rapson-Mandel syndrome are some of the examples of very severe insulin resistance due to mutation and subsequent alteration in insulin receptor function and extreme insulin resistance. Lipoatrophic diabetes lesions reside in the post-receptor signal transduction pathway. So these are some of the causes of genetic defects in insulin resistance. Now, another chunk of the secondary diabetes comes from defect in the exocrine pancreas. Exocrine pancreas deficiency may occur because of pancreatitis, because of trauma, because of neoplasia, because of cystic fibrosis, hemochromatosis, and FCPD. So this is a very common type of diabetes, and pancreatic diabetes include both structural and functional defect in the beta cell associated with exocrine deficiency of the pancreas. Other names of this pancreatic diabetes are type 3C diabetes and also pancreoprevic diabetes. So they are otherwise known as this. The distinguishing features from other types of type 1 or type 2 diabetes is that concurrent pancreatic exocrine insufficiency would be there. So clinically the patient will have fatty stools, and if we do the test we can find fecal esterase 1 test and direct function test of pancreatic exocrine insufficiency will be positive. Pathological pancreatic imaging can be there. You can get abnormal finding on the CT, MRI, ultrasound or endoscopic ultrasound. Absence of type A diabetes related immunity. So if you are not finding GAD65 and other islet antibodies, then probably we can suspect a pancreatic diabetes. There is loss of both insulin and glucagon secretion and of higher than expected insulin requirement in this group of population. Fibrocalculous pancreatic disease is one of the pancreatogenic diabetes, and this has been also included in the secondary diabetes. Uncommon form of pancreatic diabetes found in certain parts of the world. Mostly it has been found from India and southern India and also in the eastern part of the India. Patients should be from a tropical country. Diabetes should be present. Evidence of chronic pancreatitis is there, like abnormal pancreatic morphology on ultrasound and CT scan. Recurrent abdominal pain since childhood would be there. Steatorrhea, abnormal pancreatic function would be there. Absence of other causes of chronic pancreatitis like alcoholism or hepatobiliary syndrome should be there. And if we see the clinical features, they are usually lean and thin people, history of oily motion and recurrent pain abdomen, absence of ketosis even if the sugars are high, severe diabetes, and they have very brittle diabetes, it fluctuates a lot. And if we do a simple plain X-ray, you can find the small stippled calcification in the pancreatic parenchyma. USG shows duct dilatation, most commonly found in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, and etiology is not known. Maybe the cassava intake has been implicated, and it increases significantly the pancreatic carcinoma incidences. Other causes of pancreatogenic diabetes is cystic fibrosis related diabetes, though in India it is less common, but in comparison to the Western population, but still cystic fibrosis is an important disorder. And the comorbidities in people with CFT are occurring in about 20% of adolescents diabetes and 40 to 50% of adults with diabetes. It is associated with worse nutritional status, more severe inflammatory lung disease, and greater mortality. Insulin insufficiency is the primary defect of CFRD. OGTT is the recommended screening test. Annual screening for cystic fibrosis related disease with an oral glucose tolerance test should be done after 10 years of age in all patients with cystic fibrosis. And A1C is not recommended, and glucose tolerance test is the primary modality of diagnosis. Patient with cystic fibrosis related diabetes should be treated with insulin to attain individualized glycemic goals. Endocrinopathies and other syndrome can also present with secondary diabetes. The most common endocrinopathies are acromegaly, Cushing syndrome, glucagonoma, pheochromocytoma, hyperthyroidism, somatostatinoma, aldosteronoma, and others. And remember that many times we miss them unless we specifically see this category of diabetes. Other genetic syndromes are also associated with diabetes like Downs, KFS, Turner syndrome, Wolfram syndrome, Fredrickson ataxia, Huntington's chorea, Lawrence Boone Bardet Biddle syndrome. And unless we are very keen on finding these secondary causes, we may miss them. And I'll just show few of the examples how we have diagnosed secondary diabetes. Now, this lady has actually come to our OPD with uncontrolled blood glucose. For the last 2 years, she is requiring very high doses of insulin, not controlled on OAD, even if the diabetes is of 2 to 3 years duration. But when we closely observed her, we could see the prognathism of this lady, the widening of the incisor tip, and if we see the hands and the feet, they are quite stubby and acral enlargements were there. So this is a case of acromegaly, and when we did the growth hormone assay, it was quite high. And when we did an MRI imaging, you can see the large pituitary macroadenoma in this patient. So anyone could have missed this patient as only a type 2 diabetes and would have continued treatment, but it's in fact a secondary diabetes because of acromegaly. Now, this patient is another lady of 40 years age who is presented with recent history of diabetes with very uncontrolled diabetes requiring almost 95 units of insulin. Still, the sugars were running 200, 300. But when we closely observed, there was mooning of the face, and when we asked the previous photograph, she has changed in the recent time with more weight gain and mooning of the face, and there was pigmentation. And when we did the cortisol assay, the cortisol was high. The overnight dexamethasone, the low dose dexamethasone were non-suppressible, ACTH was higher. And when we did an MRI, we could find a pituitary microadenoma. So these are real cases where a Cushing syndrome has been missed as type 2 diabetes. So one has to be very, very keen. And this patient has just come 1 month back wearing a face mask because of the COVID, and he entered into the room, and he presented again with high blood glucose only. Previously, he has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes only on OAD. Sugar is not under control. Just on removal of the mask, you can see the mooning of the face. And when we ask the patient to just show his belly, you can see the white purple striae typical of Cushing. So this is also a Cushing syndrome, which was diagnosed as type 2 diabetes. Now, these were few examples where we should suspect type 2 diabetes and we should diagnose it. Now, there are various drugs that can also lead to secondary diabetes. Few of the name are mostly glucocorticoids, nicotinic acid, Vaquor, pentamidine. Thyroid hormone can also lead to it. Digoxide, beta agonist, thiazides, dilantin, alpha, gamma interferon, and others. Certain toxins such as Vaquor and intravenous pentamidine can actually permanently damage the beta cell and can lead to diabetes. Nicotinic acid and glucocorticoids mostly produce insulin resistance and severe diabetes. Interferon associated with islet cell antibodies and in certain instances severe insulin deficiency. There are infections that can cause diabetes, and we know the previous infections like congenital rubella, cytomegalovirus, and others can actually produce type 1 diabetes like features. And now COVID-19 infection has actually opened another Pandora's box, where we find many new onset diabetes are coming after COVID-19. And one of the reason is that COVID-19 also affects the pancreatic beta cell through the receptor, ACE receptor. Post-transplant diabetes mellitus, it's also a type of secondary diabetes. Immediate post-transplant hyperglycemia can happen 0 to 1 week. Early post-transplant hyperglycemia can occur between 1 to 6 weeks, but 90% of the kidney allografts who have hyperglycemia in the immediate or early post-transplant hyperglycemia usually resolves in due course of time, and they don't require any insulin at the time of discharge. PTDM is post-transplant diabetes. It's a different entity altogether. When the diabetes occurs after 6 weeks of post-transplantation, and the patient should be screened after any organ transplantation for diabetes with a formal diagnosis of post-transplantation diabetes being best made once the patient is on stable immunosuppressive therapy and in the absence of acute infection, preferably after 6 weeks of transplantation. The OGTT is the preferred test to make the diagnosis of PTDM. So I think I have covered most of the secondary causes of diabetes, and I have gone through in detail. So summarizing, secondary diabetes is an important part of the formal classification of diabetes. We should not only tell that there are type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and gestational diabetes. We have another important component which is known as secondary diabetes. A high index and suspicion is necessary for diagnosing and classifying secondary diabetes. It has got significant therapeutic implication, as we have shown in MODI and also in various drug induced or various secondary diabetes. So with that, I'll end. Thank you for the patient hearing.